What's up, guys? In this week's video, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why I still use turntables in 2023, almost 2024, and whether it's a good idea for DJs to make the switch from turntables to controllers or controllers to turntables. Let's go through it. Yo! What's up, everybody? In this week's video, I'm going to explain to you why I'm still using turntables in 2023, almost 2024. Can you believe that the year's almost over with? We got 2 more months and then that's a wrap. Before I go into this, I always got to thank everybody for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification, helps the channel grow, and you always get notified of whenever I put out these videos almost every week. If there's specific content or there's certain videos you guys want me to create, let me know, hit me up, and I'll definitely create them specifically for your requests. Before I get into the whole why I use turntables, let's talk a little about the industry first. We know that a majority of the DJs out there, they use one of 3 different types of gear. Turntables, CDJs, or controllers. The industry is constantly coming out with new gear. Rain, Pioneer, Newmark, Denon. It feels like almost every other month there's a new controller or a new piece of hardware that is coming out for DJs to all get excited about. Sometimes they have some innovative features that are unique and different, and some of them aren't too different from the last piece of equipment that came out. But I can tell you that the industry and the market is really starting to move forward to integrate all these pieces of equipment into one. You've got Rain that has the Rain 12, the Rain 1. You've got Pioneer with the Rev 7. And they just came out with their new CRS S12, which further integrates turntablist with controllerist. So it's really interesting as far as what the market's doing, how the industry is moving forward, and how they're trying to integrate old technology with new technology and sort of have like this hybrid infusion of turntables and controllers and even CDJs, kind of making everything come together and, I don't know, sort of have like this mutant baby that has all aspects of all gear all into one. Now, this video isn't about what's better, what you should be using. It's really entirely up to you as a DJ. This whole stigma of people saying in the industry that you're not a real DJ unless you use vinyl or turntables, that is the dumbest thing ever. If someone comes up to you and says you're not a real DJ because you're using a controller or using a CDJ or using a laptop or you're using an iPad, just ignore it. There is a lot of negativity. There is a lot of people who are stuck in the 80s and the 90s and old ways of thinking, and they don't want to evolve, and there's just a lot of ridiculous comments out there saying whether you are or you're not a real DJ depending on what it is that you use. So guys, if you're new to the scene, if you're new to the industry, avoid all the idiotic conversations and comments and talk that's out there, and just use what works for you. Because our gear, our equipment, the hardware, all they are just tools. And what you're able to do with that equipment is what really defines you as a good or bad DJ. I've seen DJs use turntables and just sound horrible. They suck. They had no dance floor. Nobody danced. It was really bad. I've seen people use controllers that are really, really bad. They couldn't mix to save their life. I've seen people use iPads. I've seen people use just a laptop. I've seen people use CDJs that are just absolutely incredible. And you can find videos all over YouTube of amazing DJs that are doing crazy, crazy sick mixes on the most basic of gear or the most advanced of gear. So again, it really does not matter what you use. And if somebody says you're not a real DJ because you don't use XYZ, or you're stuck in the past, or you should evolve, or whatever, just ignore it, because it's stupid, it's bullshit, and it makes no sense. And just do you, focus on your craft, use the best gear that you can afford or that you're comfortable with, and just rock out. Because, again, what comes out of the speakers is what matters. Nobody on the dance floor cares whether you're using turntables, CDJs, controllers, whatever. All they care about is that good music is playing out of the speakers and they're able to dance to it. There you go. Now, what are the pros to using a controller? There's three main reasons why a lot of people may switch from turntables or CDJs and get into the controller aspect of things. One, they're convenient. They are smaller, they're lighter, they're form-fitting, they simplify your setup. There's less hookups and connections. There's a lot of different reasons as far as them being convenient for you to make the switch from a bigger, bulkier setup like turntables in a coffin or cases to something that is much more smaller, form-fitting, takes up less space. They're also really versatile. So a lot of the new controllers that are coming out on the market, they're coming out with some really unique features. Now, we know recently with stems integration, stems is a big thing in the industry now. A lot of controllers are coming out with features that will allow you to turn on your stems and apply effects to stems and do some really cool stuff with them. They also, a lot of controllers have 4 channels. So if you need the extra channels for queuing up songs for, let's say, grand introductions for a wedding or formalities, you can do that. And there are DJs out there that can mix on all 4 channels and it just sounds amazing. You know, they might have 2 channels with acapellas and 2 channels with instrumentals, and they're doing this crazy hybrid mashup of a mix. There's some really cool DJs that are doing some amazing things with 4 channels. A lot of controllers also give you some additional mic control. So if you need to hone in your lows and your highs and your mids or the sound volume or whatever of your mics, you can do so. You can also connect multiple mics, and you can also have additional connections for extra laptops. I know there's DJs out there that like to have 2 laptops as a failover, because if one laptop dies, then they can easily just hit a switch and they can cut over into their backup laptop and there's no disruption in the music. And one of the biggest things that controllers are coming out with are having the ability to be standalone, which means they hold all the music within the actual controller, and there's no laptop that is needed. You mix everything right at the right on the controller, and your face isn't just stuck in a laptop screen all night long. I mean, you might be looking down all night, but you know, it's kind of nice to have all your music right there on the controller, and you're not dealing with a laptop and laptop crashes and blue screens of death and all this craziness that can happen with a laptop. And the third pro when it comes to controllers is that they're affordable. You can find a lot of controllers nowadays that range from a couple $100 all the way up to $2,000-$3,000. Now, obviously, a controller that's $2,000 or $3,000, a lot of people will look at that and be like, that's not affordable. But, you know, if you look at some of the big pioneer ones that are out there, some of them are between $1,000 to $1,500. They give you some really awesome features, advanced features, and you can do some pretty amazing things with them. And they have the traditional layout of a CDJ layout, so that if you are used to using CDJs, then jumping into a controller like a Pioneer where it's got the 4 channels and it's got the full-size jog wheels, the learning curve going from CDJs to a controller isn't as steep as it is going from turntables to a controller, because a standard large controller from like Pioneer or even Denon, it has the very same layout and it does a lot of similar features that a traditional CDJ layout would give you. Let's talk about the pros of using turntables. So now one of the biggest pros is that it's modular. So if something breaks when you're using a turntable setup, 2 turntables, a mixer, needles, cartridges, phase remotes, whatever. If something breaks, you can keep DJing. Let's say one of your needle breaks and you don't have a spare on you. You can easily just use 1 turntable in your mixer and use instant doubles in Serato or Virtual DJ or Tractor, whatever software that you're using, and you can keep the music going without any disruption. And it's very easy to just replace component, whereas with a controller, if it breaks on you, the whole thing is pretty much dead on you. You have to basically just DJ then with your laptop for the rest of the night, and that's not always optimal. It's not very easy. It's kind of a pain in the ass. But like I said, with a turntable setup and even a CDJ setup, it everything being modular, if a component or a piece breaks or for whatever reason stops working, you can still keep the music going, and you can just work with just the mixer or just one turntable or one CDJ, and you're good to go. Now, another pro for using turntables, and this is probably going to be, I would say, more of an opinion, but it's more fun and it just feels so good.
That's what she said.
Using turntables versus using controllers. Now, when you switch from using controllers to a turntable, you have this passion that just gets ignited that you never really had before, because it's completely different. It's a completely different piece of gear and equipment, and you do have to almost sort of learn how to mix all over again. There is a steep learning curve whenever you're going from controllers to turntables. But the other thing too is generally people who started DJing on controllers, when they try to make the switch to using turntables, they can't always do it because of that learning curve, because it's such a steep educational element that you have to pick up and figure out how to use that type of gear versus the controllers. Now, people who have started DJing or have used turntables, they can easily make the switch in the transition into controllers. So going from one to the other, easy. Going the other way, not so easy. Now, there are DJs out there who are able to make the transition and the switch from controllers to turntables with no issues. But I can tell you that a vast majority of DJs out there, that when they do try and go from controllers to turntables, they struggle a little bit. And that's not bad. It's just that turntables, it's different. It's a major learning curve sometimes for people. And one of the big comments that you see in the industry is that controllers make DJs lazy. I don't know how much I agree with that comment, but I can tell you that you got to put in more work when you're using turntables versus a controller. It's not as simple. I know there's DJs out there that rely on the sync button. You can't really use the sync button on turntables, so you have to use your pitch control. You have to be able to nudge the platter, squeeze the spindle, all of the traditional ways of mixing. And when you are using turntables, you're basically forced to actually mix. There's no shortcuts. There's no laziness. You have to actually put in the work in order to make what comes out of your speakers sound really good. So let me tell you a little why I still use turntables at literally every single gig, event, wedding. So I just, when it comes to using turntables, for me, it just feels natural. It's better for me. I have controllers. Actually, you can see one probably right there. It's a Pioneer controller, and it just sits in its case. I don't even know when the last time I turned that thing on. It just, it sits there, and it just looks pretty. One of these days, I'll probably sell it. And I have a microcontroller that I keep in my DJ laptop bag in case of emergencies where, for whatever reason, let's say both turntables blow up and my mixer blows up or whatever, I can easily switch over into a microcontroller and just keep the music going and everything is good. But I've never used that microcontroller. Knock on wood. I don't have to. The controller that's behind me, I don't know. I think maybe the last time I actually turned that thing on is maybe 2 years ago. I should probably fire up and make sure it still works. But yeah, and then as far as turntables, I have a lot of turntables. I've just sort of collected them over the years. I still have a ton of vinyl. And for me, playing on turntables is just natural. I learned to DJ on turntables. I started playing way back in the day. I originally started as a Florida and New School breakbeat DJ. And I hung out with a lot of different rave crews. I DJ'd on a college radio station, and that's all it was. It was turntables. There was no Serato. There was no Tractor. There was no record box. There was no virtual DJ. Everything was done analog mode, if you want to really call it that, because it was just basically an old traditional mixer, a couple of turntables, and a crate full of vinyl. And you always hear DJs say, "Oh, I made the switch because traveling and going upstairs with crates of vinyl. It was terrible on my back, and it just weighed a ton, and it was just really, really bad. Yeah, I don't even know very many DJs that still play on traditional vinyl. So nowadays, it's all DVS, digital vinyl systems, with Serato or Virtual DJ or Record Box or Tractor. And that's for me. And when it comes to the DVS vinyl, I have a ton of custom vinyl. It's just one of these things that I just like collecting. I like getting custom vinyl that's created specifically for me and my company. And it's just something that I really enjoy and really love to do. Now, when it comes to the weight of traveling around with turntables, I keep everything in a coffin. Everything is already pre-connected. So really all I have to do is pull up to a venue. The coffin is on wheels, so it's very, very easy for me to pull it in and move it into the venue, and hardly any sweat whatsoever. And as far as picking it up and putting it on a table, it's not that heavy. It's very, very simple. I think like my whole coffin and my turntable probably weighs maybe, 40, 50 pounds, if that. And it's just one thing. Since everything is all pre-connected, I just plug in a power cable and boom, up and running, done. And so I know that a lot of DJs, they might use separate cases, and that's where the additional connections come in place, where you've got to connect your RCAs and maybe a USB cable and all that. And then I use phase DJ at a majority of my events. I still have needles. I still keep needles connected. That's sort of my failover, so if my phase remotes die or something happens, I can easily just hit a switch and I'm right back to using needles and cartridges without any issues. But for me, using turntables, it's fun. It's entertaining. It's more natural for me. And there's another important element as far as why I use turntables. And again, this is a little controversial for a lot of DJs, but when I'm doing an event, when I'm doing a wedding, and clients or their guests come over to make a request, or they just come over to chat for a second, and they see actual turntables behind the DJ booth, their minds are blown. And I can tell you that there has been numerous people that come back behind the booth, they see the turntables, and they say, oh, you're not using one of those Fisher-Price toys like a lot of DJs. Now, I know that's kind of a jab at DJs that use controllers, and a lot of DJs might say, I don't use Fisher-Price stuff. I use legit, professional controllers. And that's fine. But the perception from people whenever they see someone using a controller versus a DJ that's using turntables, you have a much higher quality, in my opinion, of what people think of you whenever they see that you're using turntables. Now, again, I know there's DJs out there that are going to say, nope, that's not true. That's not the case. But this is just experiences that have happened for me. It's different for everybody. You might have clients and guests that come up and see a controller and be like, whoa, this is really freaking cool. But for me, it's been the opposite. People come over, they see the turntables, and they're like, wow, their minds are blown. The other important thing about turntables is if you're a DJ that wants to learn how to scratch or become a turntablist and learn how to juggle and do different types of scratches, it is much easier to learn how to scratch on turntables than it is on a controller. Turntables, you've got your 12-inch vinyl. Controllers, you've got a smaller jog wheel. And you might have a more compact space as far as using your crossfader and where all the controls are and the faders and the all the knobs and all that type of stuff. Whereas with a traditional 2 turntables and a mixer, you've got a little bit more room. It's easier to learn how to do different things, learn how to create different types of scratches and cuts. And that's why a lot of people, whenever they are looking to learn how to scratch, they make that switch from a controller to turntables. Can you still scratch on controllers? Absolutely. There are some amazing DJs out there that perform and do some incredible scratch routines on their controllers. So it's really going to come down to you as a DJ and your learning ability as far as how easy and how quickly you can pick up the art of scratching and cutting if you're using a controller and if you want to make the switch to a turntable. So the number one question is, you as a DJ, should you make the switch? If you're using a controller, should you go to a turntable? Well, it's really going to come down to you as a DJ. and what your comfort level is and what you think you might love, what you feel that is beneficial to you as a DJ. You might say, no, I don't need it. I can do everything I can do, and I do it very well with a controller. There's no need for me to switch. If you're a DJ that says, well, I want to learn how to cut, I want to learn how to scratch, I want to kind of learn how to elevate my mixing and transitions and just be a better DJ in general, then you might want to look into a turntable setup. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to take turntables to every event. You could use your controller at every wedding and event. You could get a set of turntables to use just at home. If you get a set of turntables to use at home for you to practice on and mix on, you'll find that once you master the art of playing on turntables, you'll become a much better DJ when you're using your controller at weddings and events. If you're trying to make the decision on what's right for you and what you should use and what you should do, it comes down to you and your personal preference and what you're looking to do with your services and your ability and your craft. Again, I'm going to tell you guys that people who say that you're not a real DJ because you don't use turntables and because you're using a controller, it's bullshit. Avoid it. Stay away from the negativity. And if you're one of those DJs that are telling others that they're not a real DJ if they don't use turntables, cut it out. Knock it off. Because you're showing your ego, you're being a narcissist, and you're not helping the industry grow at all. Instead, if you see someone who is using a controller and you're a turntablist, invite them to come hang out. Invite them to come to your event. Invite them to come to your home. Show them what it's like to play on a turntable. Instead of being negative and toxic, be a mentor. Show them. Give them additional abilities. And then let them make the decision for themselves. If it's better for them to stay on their controller or if they want to get into using turntables. But get out of this horrible, negative, toxic mindset that DJs are terrible, they're not real DJs or whatever if they're not using a certain piece of gear. That type of mentality is what's holding the industry and the community back. It's not moving people forward. As a community, we need to grow. We need to help each other. We need to mentor each other. We need to empower each other. And you only do that by being positive and being a good person. That's it. That's all I got to say, everyone. Thank you for watching. If you've got comments about turntables, CDJs, controllers, leave them below. Tell me, what do you use? What do you prefer to use? Were you a turntablist that went to using controllers? Were you a controllerist that went to using turntables? I want to know your story because to me, there's no right or wrong. I love hearing people's stories, how they got into DJing, what they're using now, the reasons behind it. I am so open-minded when it comes to this stuff that I don't care what anybody uses. I just want to see everybody rock out and do an incredible job and be the best DJ they can be. And most importantly, be the best human they can be. Until next week, everyone, take care of yourselves.